I think we've already heard some powerful words of the new generation and their will to engage with the various issues that we are discussing, climate, but also, obesity and the various dimensions that your wonderful reports have highlighted. And I think that, for them to be able to understand how they can care for oneself, others, and the planet, they have to understand how they work, with their biology. They have also to understand how the world works. And they have to understand that, there are powerful forces that are not aligned with their best interest. Okay? And typically, and you said it very nicely in your report, they have to understand that, all sorts of ads are not there for making them feel good, but for making them become consumers of goods that may not improve their health, on just the opposite, and may not improve the health of the planet. And so instead of just being passive consumers, they have to become active citizens. And talking about citizens, maybe they can imagine. I think to feed the imagination, you have to go both back and understand history in order to project better in the future. You have to understand, where we come from, where we are, in order to dream of where we want to go. And where we come from, when we talk about citizenship, was born, the very idea was born in Athens. And at that time, a whole package was invented, a package of democracy, citizenship, education, philosophy, science, arts, and debates of quality. But there were lots of people that were not having access to that wonderful package. Women, and I'm glad that there is so many women on this panel, young people, they were not citizens, foreigners, they were not citizens, slaves, they were not citizens. And we reinvented that whole package after we've invented the printing press during the Enlightenment period. And again, the very same people were still not considered citizens. It was still, the powerful white adult male that was in charge of making decisions. The human rights were just men's rights initially. Okay, and it took years for women to get rights. It took years for slave to get rights. It took years for the poor people to be allowed to vote. But to this date, the young people still cannot vote. And they're still not citizens in the full sense of the term. And the Greek invented the citizenship at the city level. During the Enlightenment, we invented citizenship at the national level. But today we have to invent citizenship at the global level. So I think we have to invent simultaneously, global citizenship and make sure that the youth are driving force in that global citizenship and that they are a full part of the conversation from day one, so that we can reinvent these notions of, I would say, fractal citizenship, at all scales. And, we've heard from Almaz that, she's very involved at our school level, and then at the regional level, and the national level, and now at the international level. But I think we have to be able to empower this. And indeed, as Alexiane was saying, we have to build the digital tools to empower, because lots of digital tools today are, the AI of social networks is actually abusing our weaknesses rather than empowering our strengths. Okay? And you have to be aware of these sorts of things. And so we have to redesign the digital ecosystem and the civic ecosystem to make sure that the youth can have a voice, and their voice can be the one that drives the next generations. But as Lelia was saying it very nicely, I think we have a responsibility so that the various generations should co-construct this environment that can empower and open the imagination of the youth, so that they can start to dream, and they should not just dream alone. If you realize that your dream is not just yours, but there is many others that have the same dreams, you can start building, maybe through a GPS of dreams, the ability to come together and do together things that you could not do alone. And that's exactly what we need at the moment, because the powerful forces that we have to fight are so strong that unless we join forces, we'll not be able to have the change at the right scale. I think it's a key issue, of course. I think there is different ways of doing it. One is to show that this issue is related to different complementary issues. Okay? So typically, maybe I don't care about climate, but I do care about gender equality, or I do care about poverty or health. And it happens that the United Nations has built the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 dimensions, and have shown their connectedness. So I think that's one way of doing it. Another way, I think, is to invite people to start celebrating what is the most meaningful to them in terms of the way they've progressed on one of those issues. And that's what we try to do within the Learning Planet context. We try to invite people to celebrate how they've learned to care for themselves, others, and the planet, and start to see all those connections. And when you celebrate what you've learned, you're likely to celebrate who helped you to learn. Maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a peer, maybe it's Wikipedia, maybe it's a game, maybe it's, you know, a walk in nature. But what we do know is that celebrating and developing reflexivity is the best way to develop the ability to learn how to learn, and therefore being able to engage with ever more complex issues. So celebrating your first step on the path is the best way to start willing to walk maybe for miles and miles. So I think that's another very important issue. And the third thing I think is to realize that what are our deepest values? Okay, and some anthropologists like Jonathan Haidt have worked on this, and they've highlighted that, you know, what is the most common to all of us is, we want things that are fair and things where we care. Okay, if we were not caring, we would not be here. If no one had cared for us when we were born, we would not have survived. So we are very vulnerable species, and we have to care for each other. And so the caring is very important. And so if you realize that there is things that are uncaring, that are harmful, and if you realize that there is things that are unfair, okay, and they are both unfair and harmful, then, you know, people feel that something should be done. And if we start realizing this, we can start mobilizing. And, you know, I will soon have to leave you because we are moving to another session dedicated to what will happen if we were giving kids the right to ask for new rights. And I think that's another way of mobilizing globally, is to invite children. Children have, you know, there is a UN Declaration of Children's Rights, but in that declaration, there is not the right to ask for new rights. Okay, and that's very weird. And if we were giving, you know, Almas and her generation the right to ask for new rights, what would they be asking for? Probably they would be asking for, you know, climate justice. Probably they'll be asking for, you know, many other things which would be interesting. But so maybe we have to find the way where we can all align and all feel comfortable. And, you know, we should try to work on, you know, what's unfair and what's harmful, and, you know, how do we build this common movement, and we ask for new rights, so that, you know, rights not only at the local level, but also at the global level. Because at the moment, the harm is very often global harm, and we can't escape it. So we have to be able to ask for new rights at that global scale. And it starts with the individual, but it's the individual embedded in communities. And the other things Haidt says is, you know, communities have authorities and sacredness embedded in them. Okay, so what is, you know, the authority for the global human species? What is the most sacred values for the whole human species? And I feel, you know, it's caring for the next generation. And maybe we can all agree on something like this, and then we can try to align and do things together that we could not do alone.